Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. My name's Tanya, and today I want to share with you a recipe for some soup that you may or may not have had. If you have visited Olive Garden, chances are you've either had or heard of Zuppa Toscana, which means soup of Tuscany, and it's a creamy soup that has potatoes and Italian sausage in it, but it's really good. A lot of people, that's their favorite soup when they go to Olive Garden. So I want to share that recipe with you today. But the first thing we're going to do is, of course, we're going to make our own Italian sausage because it's so difficult to find Italian sausage that just has good ingredients, no preservatives, no sugar, no MSG in it. It's almost impossible around here. I live in a small town. But we're going to make our own. It's so easy. There is literally 6 spices to go in this along with your ground pork. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Stick with us, and I hope you learned something. And we're going to have this probably tonight for dinner. So maybe it'll give you a chance to see how easy it is, and maybe you'll cook up some too. So stick with us. Okay, so what I just said actually wasn't true. There's only 5. There's 5 things to add to our ground pork to make Italian sausage. So what I want to do at first, what I've done is I've taken a 1.5 pound package of fresh ground pork from our local big store, and I've taken 1/3 of it out. So we have a pound of ground pork left. So to a pound of ground pork, we're going to add, to the bowl, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of ground sage. We'll mix this all together first, and then we'll put our ground pork in it. Sometimes it just works better that way and prevents it from getting a blob of one spice and having other areas that don't have enough. All right, 1 teaspoon of salt. Half a teaspoon of black pepper. 2 teaspoons of paprika. If you like a smoky flavor, you are welcome to use smoked paprika, but I would say just regular paprika would be your basic Italian sausage. That's what gives Italian sausage that little bit of a red color that you see when you see it in packages in a store. Now here is the key ingredient. If you don't have this, go to your local natural food store. We have Good Measure and Natural Food Store here in our town. And both are really good about stocking a lot of bulk items, but literally you can buy a half a teaspoon of fennel seed if you need it. If you don't think you're ever going to use it again, which if you make pizza you will, but I would encourage you to have this in stock at your house. So we're going to go with a half teaspoon of fennel seed. A little bit of a stir just to get it all mixed up. Then we'll put our ground pork in here. Okay, time to take the rings off, and we're just going to mash this up with our hands. Because sometimes it just works better. This goes together super quick. If you have kids in the house, this is a good job to get them to do. Give them a big bowl though. Don't give them a little bowl like I have here. Give them a big bowl so they have room to stir it around, get it up their elbows without getting it out on your counter, losing some of those necessary ingredients. This is about what this looks like. We're going to be cooking this, so it'll get mixed up a little better than that. But for right now, that will do. I'll get as much off of this, off my hands as I can. And we're going to place this in the fridge because we have some potatoes to cut up right now. And we'll get to that now. All right, we're back over here at the sink, and I have a few russet potatoes. These are organic russets, and I've scrubbed them. I let them soak in the sink for a while. I think people would be surprised how much dirt still comes off these potatoes when you let them just sit in a sink of room temperature water. It's just astounding how much dirt can stick to them. I mean, they are grown in dirt, I get that, but still, there's some dirt still left on there. I don't think I want to eat that dirt. But we're going to cut these potatoes in cubes about this size and kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. Any little bad spots, hopefully I can catch before they get too far into the process. Sometimes the end of the potato needs to be cut off. And Lacey and Zoe both think I have a treat up here, and dogs do not need to eat potatoes, and they don't even like potatoes. So as soon as I got the cutting board and the knife out, though, I think they thought I was going to be over here cutting up something that they wanted and needed. So they're following me over here and watching carefully as I don't give them something. I would say probably 4 or 5 average size russet potatoes would be sufficient for this recipe. Potatoes are going to add a lot of your creaminess as well. Not your average potato soup, that's for sure. I like to buy organic potatoes just for the simple fact that many potatoes are sprayed with a sprout inhibitor once they go to storage, and it's not something that I would spray on a salad or spray on any of my food, so I don't really care to have that in my potatoes if I can keep from it. And organic potatoes are not supposed to be sprayed with a sprout inhibitor. Now these will sprout, of course, especially if you keep them in a warm area. Right now, I have mine stored out in the garage in an area that gets a little bit of air flowing across it because it's still cool in the garage, pretty cool in the garage. Some days it's really cool in the garage. But in the summertime, of course, I bring them in and store them in an area that isn't necessarily cool. It's as cool as my house is with air conditioner running in the summertime, but airflow is sometimes as important, if not more important, than the temperature in a room. So if you have a problem with your produce going bad, it may not be the temperature as much as it is the airflow. They really, really need good airflow. If you'll notice in really good produce departments, they'll have ceiling fans above their produce. And that is to keep the air flowing around it. Okay, we're also going to take a potato and just cut it in small pieces. Of course, not as big as the potato pieces, but a little bit smaller. I should have probably used my fancy onion dicer, but I didn't want to walk over to the pantry. I know that sounds lazy, but it's not a matter of lazy. It's a matter of leaving the cutting board, and I have my microphone on me, but it's not tethered to the camera anymore. I actually got a new microphone here a while back that I can walk around with. It's I don't know if you call it freestanding, but I'm not tethered to the camera anymore. Just a matter of leaving the cutting board for a moment. Okay, we'll get our onion in the bowl. All right, we have all our things chopped up. Now we'll get to the other part. Next thing we're going to do is take our kale. We have fresh kale. If you've never had fresh kale, I would encourage you to try it. When I was, I guess first married, I had no idea what kale was. That wasn't really a thing. It didn't really become popular until maybe, I don't know, I'd say maybe 10, 15 years ago, got real popular. But kale was just really used for decoration around salad bars. And when I say decoration, it was like the decoration that was the divider for all the different items on a salad bar. So when I knew that people started eating it, I kept looking at it like, you know how when you see somebody in a store, you pass them and you think, they look familiar, where do I know them from? Well, that's kind of the same look I was giving the kale when I would see it, when they would tout it as something edible and something good for you. I'd look at it like, I know you from somewhere, but I don't know where it's from. And then all of a sudden it hit me, hey, you're the guy from the salad bar that was in between all the stuff that I was actually eating. Why am I eating this now? But actually it's quite good. I have several recipes that call for kale, and it's surprisingly good. And just knowing that it's good for me just makes it that much better. So kind of rough chop it. You don't want any big giant pieces in there, but you don't have to get it so tiny that it's not distinguishable. And the recipe calls for about 2 cups, but I mean, when something like this is measured into 2 cups, I'm thinking, is it like 2 cups if it's pureed, or is it 2 cups if you chop it real tiny? So I'm a fan of the kale, so I'd rather err on the side of putting too much in there than not enough. So I would say if you have a 4-cup measuring cup, just kind of loosely, not really pack it down, but put it in there to where your 4-cup measuring cup is pretty full. That's what I'm using over here. And I have all this extra to use for something else, which is nice. It's sad when you live in a town that's small enough that nobody carries organic fresh kale. You have to go to a town 20-something miles away to get kale. But that's the price you pay for living in a town that everybody wants to live in, but not everybody can. I say that, and I know my daughter's rolling her eyes. She is, oh my goodness, they're about to come out of her head. She's rolling them so hard. Anyway, we like it in our small town. Okay, let's go over to the stove. We're going to get this going in a stock pot. All right, so what I'm doing now is a little unconventional. The recipe that I wrote initially for this talks about taking 3 or 4 slices of raw bacon and cooking them in your stock pot, and then once they get crispy, and crumble them up, clean the bacon grease out of there, or not, because if you're like me, it's kind of an essential thing. But I already have my bacon cooked because, as you know, I've told you before in a former video, I keep cooked bacon in my lower oven in a pan or in the pantry. So it's already cooked. So what I'm going to do with this is just take it and stir it around a bit just to get the pan a little greasy with the bacon grease. Now this is no nitrite bacon. It's uncured bacon. So it's the lesser of several evils if you're not a fan of the fat content and all that in bacon. But I'm a fan of bacon. I'm just saying. I'm a big fan of bacon. I like chocolate covered bacon. It is one of my favorite things. Bacon and dark chocolate. It is divine. But all that being said, I wouldn't normally put cooked bacon in the pan, but since I already have bacon cooked, that's how it's going to be. And all I'm doing really is just getting a little bit of a greasy coating on my pan here. This crisps the bacon up a little bit. The bacon stays pretty crisp in my pantry, but when I'm ready to make a sandwich or something with it, I normally just put it in a skillet and heat it up a bit, and it crisps up beautifully. So no problem with that. We're going to set our burner at about a medium to medium high, because we're going to be cooking our Italian sausage next. All right, I've got a little bit of a greasy coating going there. Transfer your bacon over to a different container. If you're using uncooked bacon and you're sauteing it right now, just keep right on going. Don't let it burn, just let it get crispy. So this is our Italian sausage that we had put in the refrigerator a while ago. Just made it. That bacon grease helps it just not to stick to the bottom of the pan quite so much. I know I've said this in an earlier video about cooking just bulk pork sausage, but chances are you went ahead and skipped the homemade sausage and bought your own and made the sausage cheddar muffins maybe, or the sausage and sauerkraut casserole, and thought, man, this is really good. Maybe next time I'll try the bulk pork sausage. I'm telling you, once you make it from this, you won't even think twice about buying store-bought sausage again. I can almost guarantee that. There is really no comparison to the store-bought kind and the homemade kind. It just has such a better flavor to it. Again, no sugar, no MSG, no preservatives. You don't need that. So few ingredients. And again, with the Italian sausage as well, so few ingredients. It's just kind of silly that there's such a long list of ingredients on things like this when you buy it in a store. But again, a lot of it has to do with preservation for shelf life. They don't want it to go bad before they can sell it. They're in business to sell groceries. They're not evil. That's just the way they do things now. Got a lot of people to cater to. And this browns up so pretty. Now, if you wanted to go ahead and use that 1.5-pound package, which is what our big store sells the bulk ground pork in, just plain ground pork, they sell it in 1.5-pound packages. So you can take the measurements that we use for our Italian sausage, just add another 50% to it, and then have 1.5 pounds of Italian sausage. Take part of that out, and once you've cooked it all, and use it for topping pizzas, and I'm telling you what, it's really good. Or even, using your favorite red sauce for pasta and topping pasta with it, but the Italian sausage in it is just phenomenal. All right, your Italian sausage doesn't necessarily have to get completely browned in this step right here before you add your potatoes and onions. You just want it to basically get to the point to where you can break it up into smaller pieces and it won't have big blobs, big chunks of meat in there. And then at that point, you can add your potatoes and onions. You might have to adjust your heat just a little bit, but this will all cook eventually. Okay, we're going to add our potatoes and onions to this. You'll stir this to coat the potatoes and the onions with a lot of that fat from the sausage, which really doesn't have a lot in it. It's not a greasy fat like you would find in commercial Italian sausage, but just enough to it to where it'll coat the potatoes, and that will help them cook without sticking. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to put the lid on this, continue cooking it until the potatoes and the onions are tender. Then we'll come back and we'll add our kale, our milk, our garlic, and it's pretty much done. If we want to thicken it up, you can add flour to it. I don't necessarily think I'm going to add flour this time. I'm going to leave it in a little bit thinner mixture, but sometimes I will add flour to it to make a roux and thicken it up a bit, but I don't really think it needs it this time. And you know, it's just extra thickener. It's not for flavor. So we'll be back in just a bit when these are softened up. Okay, we are back, and our potatoes have become a little more transparent. You can tell they're cooked because the edges of them are getting rounded, which means they're just on the verge of falling apart. The more you stir them, the more round they get. So what we're going to do now is add what amounts to 2 cloves of garlic. If you like a lot of garlic, add more. If you don't like garlic that much, add less. I'll put a little more than half a teaspoon in there. And that's just minced garlic. Then we're going to add our kale to that we chopped up. If you want more kale in that, feel free to add more. You can even add more once the soup is all done. There's no issue with that. If you look at it and go, you know what? I think I need more green in that, which I rarely hear anybody say. But you can always add more later on, because kale cooks pretty quick into whatever you're cooking. You don't want it just falling apart. You need some texture to it, but it sure is a pretty addition to this soup too. And we're going to add 5 cups of milk. I have whole organic milk here. Now when this starts cooking down and it gets a little bit thicker, we're going to take our bacon that we cooked initially and we're going to crumble it up and put it over the top of it. So for right now, we'll just give this a stir. I turned my heat down just a little bit, so we're going to cook it a little bit slower. Cook it until the kale gets done. And it's going to thicken up just a bit simply because you've got potatoes in there, and potatoes, as you know, are a thickener. Sometimes if you're cooking a soup and it looks a little watery and you have somebody that maybe is gluten intolerant, you can just take dehydrated potatoes or some cooked potatoes, a spoonful of mashed potatoes you have left over in the refrigerator, plop it in that soup and it thickens up really nicely. Surprisingly enough, it thickens up really nicely without adding any gluten to anything. You're just going to be adding starch to it basically. But it has a really nice texture when it's done, and it's so pretty. Okay, we'll come back when this cooks down a bit, thickens up, and we'll see what it looks like then. And then we'll serve some up and let you see what it looks like in a serving dish. All right, finally we have our soup done, and it has thickened up just a little bit. I'm running my wooden spoon along the bottom of the pan because it's just natural for a potato to want to stick to anything, even this type of pan that's a tempered glass. but if you just take and run your spoon along the bottom, it all comes up nicely. But I'm just going to take the bacon now and empty this into here. Get every little speck of it because we like that bacon. I think the longer this sits, the better it gets, and kind of the thicker it gets too. Notice I didn't even peel my potatoes. You're free to peel your potatoes if you want to. I just don't bother with it if I scrub them clean. But isn't that such a beautiful soup? So maybe I'll video a few seconds of it when I dish it up into a bowl. So for right now, you can see what that looks like. So the recipe will be in the description. If you want to make this, so few ingredients in this, and please, please, please try and start with that homemade Italian sausage. You will not regret it. It will not be a waste of your time. And I hope you enjoy this.